Captain Chen surveyed the wreckage of Nexus Station's Grand Council chamber through a haze of emergency lighting. The once immaculate hall now lay in ruins, with decorative pillars representing 10,000 years of galactic peace shattered like forgotten promises. She pressed a hand against her bleeding temple and activated her neural comm. "Harbinger, status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. Lieutenant Mercer's voice crackled through her implant. "Captain, we've secured evacuation routes in sectors 7 through 12. 37 council delegates confirmed safe aboard. Engineering teams are bypassing damaged life support systems to maintain atmosphere in the diplomatic quarters." Chen nodded to herself. Her crew was performing admirably despite being the youngest, least experienced team in the diplomatic fleet. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity, barely a century into faster-than-light travel, now coordinating the rescue of civilizations that had been crossing the stars when Earth's continents were still forming. "The Morrigan delegates?" she asked, remembering the amphibious beings who had been most vocal against humanity's council petition. A pause. "Still trapped in the Eastern Chamber. Station security protocols have sealed the aquatic environments as a containment measure." Chen swore under her breath. The Morrigan had been openly hostile during her presentation, their speaker calling humans aggressive primates unfit for civilized discussion. Now their lives depended on those same primates. "Redirect Team Bravo," she ordered. "I want those seals breached and the Morrigan evacuated within 15 minutes. As she navigated through the twisted corridors, Chen passed Council security forces standing in formation, awaiting orders from a chain of command that had disintegrated in the first moments of the attack. Their highly specialized training, perfected over centuries, had never accounted for the station's central artificial intelligence being compromised. "You're just going to stand there." She snapped at a group of Centaurian guards, their crystalline armor gleaming uselessly in the emergency lights. Their commander turned slowly. "Protocol dictates maintaining defensive positions until central authority establishes. People are dying." Chen gestured toward a collapsed walkway where civilians huddled behind a failing energy barrier. "Your central authority is either dead or evacuated. Make a decision." The commander hesitated, neural implants flickering as he searched for precedent in thousands of years of military doctrine. Finding none, he finally nodded. "We will assist." Chen didn't wait to see if they followed. She had more pressing concerns. The attack pattern bothered her. The precision strikes against communication arrays, the targeted destruction of specific council chambers. This wasn't random violence. This was methodical, strategic. She reached the Eastern Chamber to find Ensign Kalia, a fresh Academy graduate, already cutting through the sealed doorway with a plasma torch, her dark skin glistening with effort. "Kalia, report." The young woman didn't look up from her work. "Life signs stable inside, Captain. Water level rising due to damaged containment systems. 7 minutes until critical. Continue." Chen tapped her neural comm. "Engineering, I need emergency atmosphere conversions at these coordinates. The Morrigan can't breathe our air, and we can't breathe water." As her crew scrambled to implement the improvised rescue, Chen studied the tactical display projected from her wrist unit. The attacking ships moved with unsettling coordination, herding escaping vessels into specific vectors. Recognition dawned. She'd seen these tactics before in historical archives about Earth's naval conflicts. The attackers weren't just destroying, they were corralling. "Harbinger, plot intercept course with the following coordinates." She transmitted, sending calculations faster than she could verbalize them. "Prepare to execute emergency jump sequence Delta." Her first officer's voice returned, alarmed. "Captain, that course takes us directly into the attack formation. Protocol for diplomatic vessels explicitly forbids." "Protocol be damned." Chen cut him off. "They're not randomly attacking. They're funneling escapees. I've seen this before. It's a capture strategy." Making her decision, Chen raised her voice to address the ship's AI. "Override safety protocols, Authorization Chen at Alpha 09. Prepare for atmospheric decompression in sectors 9 through 12. The chamber door finally yielded, and Kalia stumbled back as pressurized water burst through. Chen caught her before she fell. "The Morrigan delegates," she asked. "All alive," Kalia confirmed, coughing. "But they're refusing evacuation by human vessels." Chen's expression hardened. "Tell them their choices are a human vessel or joining their ancestors. They have 30 seconds to decide." As the reluctant delegates were loaded onto emergency transport pods, Chen received confirmation that the Harbinger had positioned itself between the attacking fleet and the main evacuation route. A dangerous gamble, but if she was right about the enemy's intentions, perhaps the only chance for thousands of refugees to escape. "All hands, brace for impact," she ordered, running toward the nearest transport. "And someone find me a working weapon." Admiral Wei Zhang stood at the viewport of Earth's orbital command station, watching as construction drones swarmed over the skeletal frame of what would become the Defiance, the first heavy cruiser built entirely with human technology. Mars gleamed red in the distance, its surface now dotted with mining operations and manufacturing complexes that had sprung up virtually overnight. "You've accomplished much in 3 months," Ambassador Kella observed, her translucent skin shifting hues as she spoke, a biological trait of Vestans that humans still found disconcerting. Zhang didn't turn. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The intelligence briefings haunted him. 17 frontier systems gone silent since the Nexus Station attack. The Shadow Collective moved with a precision that defied conventional military doctrine, leaving no survivors, no distress signals, just silence followed by darkness. "The Council still debates while worlds burn," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "They've spent so long in peace they've forgotten how to fight." Kella moved beside him, her 7-fingered hand resting briefly on the viewport. "Not all of us have forgotten, Admiral. The Vestan Alliance remembers our war of independence. We were considered too violent to join the Council for 3 centuries afterward." Zhang finally turned to face her. "And now we recognize familiar eyes when we see them." Kella's skin rippled with deep blue patterns, a sign of resolve among her people. "My government cannot officially support your efforts, but I've brought something else." She gestured toward the door where 3 Vestan officers waited. "Our best tactical minds, volunteering for cultural exchange." A chime interrupted them as Zhang's neural interface activated. "Admiral Priority Transmission from Deep Space Monitoring, Outpost Epsilon. Captain Chen's vessel has returned to Earth space." Zhang straightened. "Status: critical, sir. The Swift Justice sustained heavy damage. Medical teams standing by." Minutes later, Zhang strode into the medical bay where Chen lay on a regeneration platform, medics working to repair internal injuries. Despite their efforts, she pushed herself to a sitting position when he entered. "Sir," she managed, grimacing through pain, "I couldn't transmit this. Had to bring it personally." Zhang motioned for the medics to step back. "Report, Captain." "We penetrated their communication blackout at Proxima Centauri, established observation posts to monitor fleet movements." Chen's eyes glazed momentarily as painkillers fought against her determination to remain lucid. "They don't use standard communications, sir. No quantum entanglement, no subspace signals, nothing we could detect." "Yet they coordinate perfectly," Zhang said. "Yes, and that's not all." Chen reached for a secure data crystal, her hands shaking. "We captured this during our escape. Neural tissue samples from a destroyed enemy vessel." Zhang took the crystal, his expression hardening. "Neural tissue. The ships aren't just coordinated, sir. They're connected. Our xenobiologists believe we're facing a hive consciousness, a single entity controlling thousands of vessels." Chen's voice dropped. "And it's learning. Our first engagement, we destroyed 3 attackers using unconventional tactics. The second engagement, they'd adapted. The third," she gestured to her injuries, explanation enough. Zhang pocketed the crystal. "Rest, Captain. You've done well." Sir, there's more. Chen's voice strengthened with urgency. When we deployed the experimental chaff pattern, the one mimicking random neural firing, their formation broke down temporarily. They made mistakes. It supports Dr. Okafor's theory that their neural network can be disrupted by unpredictable stimuli. Unpredictable stimuli, Zhang repeated slowly. Like human battle tactics. Exactly, sir. The older council races fight by established doctrine, patterns refined over millennia. But humans, Chen managed a pained smile. We improvise. Zhang placed a hand on her shoulder. Get yourself healed, Chen. I'll need you for what comes next. After leaving the medical bay, Zhang found Ambassador Kella waiting in the corridor, her skin now a somber gray. Your hearing was enhanced to catch our conversation, Zhang said. It wasn't a question. Kella didn't deny it. A hive mind explains much. The council races fear what they cannot understand, but my people have legends of such entities from before our spacefaring days. Legends won't help us fight, Zhang replied. Perhaps not, but there is something else that might. Kella's eyes fixed on him intently. You've noticed the council ships donated to your fleet are outdated, minimal contributions. Zhang nodded grimly. What they did not tell you, Kella continued, is that among those vessels are 3 prototype stealth scouts with experimental phase-shifting technology. The council deemed them too dangerous for production. The phase shifting can cause neural damage to crews without proper shielding. Which humans might be resistant to? Zhang finished, understanding dawning. Precisely. Your species evolved on a radiation-bathed world with powerful magnetic fields. Your neural structures are remarkably adaptable. Kella's skin flushed with green determination. The prototypes are designated for research purposes only, but with the right modifications. Zhang's gaze returned to the viewport, where the Defiance continued taking shape against the stars. Show me these prototypes, Ambassador, and then find me every engineer in Earth space who can keep a secret. Dr. Maya Okafor floated in the observation blister of Zhang's flagship, the newly christened Defiance, watching the assembled fleet prepare for humanity's first offensive action. The vessels formed a striking contrast, sleek human destroyers alongside bulky Vestan cruisers and the elegant, elongated ships of the Procyon Federation. Most remarkable were the 3 phase-shift prototypes, their hulls shimmering with a disorienting visual effect that made them difficult to focus on directly. Beautiful, isn't it? Captain Chen asked, joining her at the viewport. She moved carefully, still recovering from her injuries, but insisted on commanding the lead tactical squadron. Terrifying, Okafor corrected. We're about to violate direct council orders, potentially start an interstellar diplomatic incident, and attack an enemy we barely understand, with experimental technology that might fry our brains. Chen smiled. Like I said, beautiful. Okafor shook her head. The military mindset remained alien to her, despite months embedded with the fleet. As the expedition's chief xenolinguist, she'd been tasked with deciphering Shadow Collective communications, a challenge that had consumed her waking hours since Chen brought back the neural tissue samples. The neural patterns we extracted, she said, bringing up a holographic display between them. They're not just sharing information, they're sharing consciousness itself. Look here. She highlighted a pulsing section of data. These patterns match how human brains process identity, selfhood. But in their case, the self extends across multiple vessels, maybe their entire species. Chen studied the display intently. So we're not fighting ships. We're fighting appendages of one organism. Exactly. And that's why your chaff deployment worked. It introduced neurological noise into their system, like a migraine, but for their group mind. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's AI. All personnel to battle stations. Fleet jump sequence initiating in 5 minutes. Chen straightened. That's my cue. You're still sure about coming along? We could transmit your findings from a safe distance. Okafor closed the holographic display with a gesture. The data is too complex. I need to observe their reactions in real time. Minutes later, the assembled fleet vanished into jump space, emerging at the coordinates intelligence had identified as a shadow collective staging area. What greeted them exceeded even the worst projections. "Sweet Mother of Mercy," Zhang whispered from the command deck. Hundreds of collective vessels swarmed around a massive structure, part ship, part processing facility, that dwarfed anything in known space. The structure's surface rippled with neural patterns visible even at this distance, pulsing with the unmistakable rhythm of thought. "Status report," Zhang demanded, snapping everyone from their momentary shock. "Enemy vessels altering course," the tactical officer responded. "They're forming a defensive perimeter around the central structure." Zhang nodded grimly. "Deploy according to Sunburst Protocol. Phase shift vessels. Prepare for insertion." The human-led fleet exploded into action, breaking into pre-designated attack wings. The Council observer, a Meridian elder named Sothis who had insisted on accompanying the mission, watched in barely concealed horror. "This is madness," Sothis muttered. "You're outnumbered 5-1. Which is why we're not fighting by the numbers," Zhang replied without taking his eyes off the tactical display. "Chen, you're clear for asteroids." On the Relentless, Chen activated the mining charges her squadron had deployed during their jump approach. Massive asteroids that had been hovering at the system's edge detonated in calculated sequence, creating a cascade of debris that tore through the perfect formation of collective ships. The enemy response was immediate and revealing. "Sir." Okafor's voice cut through the command channel. "Look at their pattern recalibration. It's exactly as we predicted, neural propagation delay. The outer vessels lost synchronization for 3.7 seconds before the collective consciousness could compensate." Zhang smiled thinly. "Exactly the window we need. Phase shift squadron, execute piercing maneuver now." The 3 prototype vessels, piloted by volunteers who had trained relentlessly for this moment, activated their experimental drives. Their hulls shifted partially out of normal space, allowing them to pass directly through the collective's defensive screen like ghosts through a wall. Emergency medical readouts showed the crews suffering neural strain, but holding. Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Phase shift squadron has penetrated to the central structure. Deploying neural disruptors in 3, 2, 1. The devices Chen's team had developed based on Okafor's research activated simultaneously, broadcasting chaotic neural patterns specifically designed to confuse hive-mind coordination. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Collective vessels nearest the central structure began moving erratically, some colliding with each other. "It's working," Okafor exclaimed, fingers flying across her neural interface as she recorded the data stream. "Their coordination is breaking down along exactly the predicted." Her analysis cut short as the central structure suddenly pulsed with blinding intensity. "Energy surge detected," the sensor officer shouted. "Massive power buildup in the central." The structure expelled a shockwave of energy, unlike anything in Council records. As it expanded outward, collective vessels within its path didn't explode or break apart. They synchronized, their movements becoming perfectly coordinated again. "They're adapting," Okafor whispered. "The hive is learning." The Grand Council chamber had never witnessed such discord in its 9,000-year history. Representatives from 200 species shouted over one another while the ancient Meridian moderators struggled to maintain order. At the center of the storm stood Admiral Zhang, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle at the Shadow Collective staging area. "The evidence is before you," Zhang said, his voice cutting through the chaos. 3 systems attacked simultaneously in the past week alone. The defensive line will not hold without reinforcement. Elder Sothis of the Meridian Accord floated forward, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that signaled deep distress. "Admiral Zhang speaks truth. I witnessed their tactics firsthand. The collective adapts with alarming speed, and their neural processing structure suggests capabilities beyond our current understanding." The hegemony representative, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate mechanical housing, pulsed with dismissive light patterns. One battle does not constitute sufficient data. The Council's strategic models suggest withdrawal to core systems remains the optimal solution. The frontier worlds have always understood their status as expendable. John's fist slammed against the podium. There are 80 billion sentient beings on those expendable worlds. The chamber erupted again until the Viridian Confederation's ancient ambassador activated the ceremonial silence field, a privilege granted only to founding members. "We have deliberated for 3 standard months," the Viridian said, her voice resonating with the harmonic overtones of her species. "In that time, 17 more systems have gone silent. The Shadow Collective now threatens Proxima Colony, barely 8 light-years from Earth itself. The time for debate has passed." "Then let us vote," the hegemony representative demanded. "As is our way." The vote proceeded with ceremonial solemnity. When the results materialized in the chamber's central display, John's expression hardened to stone. The majority had chosen strategic withdrawal, abandoning the frontier to buy time for core systems to prepare defenses. "So be it," he said quietly, removing his council credentials and placing them on the podium. "Humanity will stand alone." As Jean turned to leave, the Centaurian representative, whose security forces had assisted during the Nexus Station attack, stepped into his path. "Not alone, Admiral," the crystalline being said. "My government cannot officially act against Council directive, but I speak for 2,000 Centaurian warships whose captains request navigational assistance to reach Earth space." Similar declarations followed. The Protean Federation offered advanced targeting systems. The Arcturan scouts promised their sensory technology. One by one, representatives from 20 species, most considered second-class citizens in the ancient hierarchy, pledged unofficial support. The Viridian ambassador watched silently, neither condemning nor endorsing these declarations. Only when Zhang reached the chamber doors did she speak again. "Admiral," her harmonic voice carried across the now hushed room, "the Viridian Confederation has existed for 50,000 of your years. We have seen empires rise and fall, watched stars live and die. In all that time, we have never witnessed a species so young move with such purpose." Zhang paused but didn't turn. "We will be watching," she concluded, her tone unreadable. Back on the Defiance, orbiting Earth, Zhang found Captain Chen already implementing what they had begun calling the Sunburst Defense, positioning mixed-species battle groups at strategic points along the frontier. "How many ships?" he asked, surveying the tactical display. 700 and counting, Chen replied, most arriving without official government sanction. Volunteer crews, some vessels operating under navigational malfunction status to explain their presence. Dr. Okafor entered the command deck, her expression grave. "Admiral, we've completed analysis of the neural patterns extracted during the first offensive. The Shadow Collective isn't just coordinating attacks, it's processing the consciousness of conquered species." She projected a holographic display showing comparative neural scans. These patterns match brainwave signatures from 17 different council species. The collective appears to be harvesting minds. Before Zhang could respond, emergency alerts flashed across the command interfaces. The tactical officer's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple Shadow Collective signatures. They've bypassed our forward observation posts and entered Proxima Colony's orbital path." "How many vessels?" Zhang demanded. 316, sir. And they're moving in a formation we haven't encountered before, some kind of double helix pattern. Chen studied the incoming data, her expression darkening. "They're not just adapting to our tactics. They're anticipating them." "All ships to battle stations," John ordered. "Deploy the Black Armada according to Contingency Epsilon." As the fleet mobilized, Ambassador Kella arrived on the bridge, her skin rippling with urgent color patterns. "Admiral, I've received word from my government. The Vestan Alliance officially withdraws from the Galactic Council and pledges its full military support to Earth. What changed their minds? John asked. Kelda's skin shifted to deep crimson, the Vestin color of absolute truth. Long-range sensors detected Shadow Collective scout vessels within the Vestin home system. The Council denied our request for defensive support, claiming it would provoke further aggression. Throughout the command deck, similar messages arrived from other species representatives. One by one, the disregarded younger civilizations were making their choice, not out of altruism, but survival. Facing extinction, they turned not to the ancient powers that had guided galactic civilization for millennia, but to humanity, the upstarts who refused to accept defeat. "We need a name," Chen said quietly, studying the growing fleet registry. "Something beyond mixed species battle group." John nodded. "We already have one. The Shadow Collective calls us the Chaos Bringers. The Council calls us Reckless. But to our allies, we are simply the Black Armada." The orbital shipyards above Mars had transformed beyond recognition. Where once a handful of construction platforms had serviced Earth's modest exploration fleet, now hundreds of structures swarmed with activity. Ships from 24 species underwent modifications according to specifications that would have been considered heretical by Council standards. Captain Chen walked the length of Docking Bay 17, where Vestin engineers worked alongside human technicians to retrofit a Procyon battle cruiser with experimental shield generators. The vessel's graceful lines now bristled with weapons systems sourced from 5 different worlds. "Ugly, but effective," commented Commander Revik, a Procyon tactical officer whose silver-scaled skin contrasted with his midnight blue uniform. Like many of the alien volunteers, he'd adapted a variation of Earth military dress, a visual symbol of the unlikely coalition. "Function over form," Chen agreed. "The collective doesn't care about aesthetics." Revik's multifaceted eyes clicked as he adjusted their focus. "My people have a saying. Beauty exists in survival itself. These modifications will help us survive." Their inspection was interrupted by a priority alert from Chen's neural interface. "Captain, your presence is requested in Laboratory Complex 7. Dr. Okafor reports a breakthrough." Chen found the xenolinguist surrounded by holographic displays of neural activity, her eyes rimmed with the red of exhaustion. Dozens of researchers from various species worked at adjacent stations, their disparate physiologies creating a scene that would have been unimaginable before the war. "You found something?" Chen asked without preamble. Okafor nodded, manipulating the central display to highlight a specific pattern. "We've been approaching this wrong. We've been treating the collective's neural network as a communication system when it's actually a cognitive structure." She expanded the display to show comparative scans. "Look here, this is a human brain processing language. This is a Vestin processing vision. And this," she highlighted a third pattern, "is collective neural tissue processing both simultaneously." They're not just sharing information between ships, Chen realized. They're sharing sensory experience itself. Exactly. The collective doesn't see through cameras or sensors. It sees through the neural tissue that's harvested. Okafor brought up another display showing the phase shift prototype vessels. That's why the phase shift technology confuses them. Their consciousness can't process something partially out of normal space-time. Okafor gestured to a Meridian scientist who floated forward, crystalline body pulsing with light. Elder Sothis has been essential to this discovery. His species' natural quantum perception allowed us to identify wavelength patterns we couldn't detect with standard equipment. The Meridian's voice resonated through the chamber. The Shadow Collective creates perfect order by forcing disparate consciousness into artificial unity. But such integration has weaknesses. Just as your biological immune systems reject foreign tissue, their neural network experiences dissonance, which we can exploit, Chen said. Theoretically, yes. We've developed what we're calling a neural chaff deployment system, essentially a targeted electromagnetic pulse calibrated to the exact frequency of the dissonance we've detected. Chen's expression hardened with determination. Get it into production immediately. I want prototypes on my flagship within 48 hours. As Chen left the laboratory, she encountered Admiral Zhang in the corridor, deep in conversation with Ambassador Kella and representatives from 3 other species. Their discussion fell silent as she approached. Captain, Zhang acknowledged her. Walk with me. Once they were alone, Zhang spoke quietly. The defensive line at Proxima Colony is failing. Our latest intelligence suggests the collective will breach it within 72 hours. Chen had suspected as much. The neural chaff prototypes won't be ready in time. No, but we have another option. Zhang's expression was grave. The Arcturans have offered us access to their gravitic compression technology. Chen stopped walking. The same technology the Council banned a century ago. The one that collapsed an entire star system. The very same. The Arcturans claim they've refined it for precision deployment. Zhang met her gaze directly. I need your assessment, Captain. Not as my subordinate, but as someone who's faced the collective directly. Chen considered carefully. The gravitic compression weapon had been classified as a crime against existence itself by Council doctrine. Its use would violate every ethical guideline in known space. But if Proxima Colony fell, how many inhabited worlds are in the Proxima system? She asked finally. 3 major colonies, approximately 12 billion sentients. Chen closed her eyes briefly. And if we deploy this weapon, we target the primary collective staging area in the outer system, uninhabited space, but close enough to their main fleet to catch most of their vessels in the compression field. Do it, Chen said without hesitation. But sir, there's something else to consider. Dr. Okafor's research suggests the collective neural network experiences all events simultaneously across its consciousness. If we destroy a significant portion of their fleet in a single moment, the psychic shock might reverberate throughout their entire system, Zhang finished, giving us the window we need to evacuate Proxima. As they reached the command center, emergency alerts flashed across the displays. Lieutenant Mercer, Chen's former officer from the Harbinger, now serving as communications chief, looked up with concern. Sir, Captain, we are receiving transmissions from multiple frontier systems. The Shadow Collective has altered its attack pattern. They're bypassing military targets to focus on civilian population centers. Zhang and Chen exchanged grim looks. They're adapting again, Zhang said quietly. No, Chen replied, studying the tactical data. This isn't adaptation. This is retaliation. Somehow they know what we're planning. Zhang's expression darkened. Then we have no choice but to strike first and strike hard. Captain Chen, you'll lead the assault force. Your mission: deploy the Arcturan weapon and secure an evacuation corridor for Proxima Colony. Chen nodded once. The Relentless stands ready, Admiral. Good hunting, Captain, Zhang said. The Black Armada rises or falls with your success. The Relentless erupted from jump space at the edge of the Proxima system, followed by 57 vessels of the Black Armada assault force. Captain Chen stood on the command deck, watching as the tactical display populated with hundreds of Shadow Collective signatures swarming around Proxima Colony's 3rd planet. Status report, she ordered, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. The Arcturan gravitic compression device hummed in the ship's modified cargo bay, a weapon so powerful its mere possession had once been punishable by exile from civilized space. Collective forces concentrated in sectors 4 through 7, Lieutenant Mercer reported. They've established a blockade around the primary evacuation corridors. Colonial defense forces are holding at approximately 38% strength. Chen studied the enemy formation. They're herding civilians into collection zones, just like at Nexus Station. Dr. Okafor, who had insisted on joining the mission despite the danger, looked up from her neural monitoring station. Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity in the collective neural network. The signature is fragmented, inconsistent with previous encounters. Meaning what exactly? Chen asked. I'm not certain, Okafor admitted. It's as if parts of their consciousness are operating semi-independently, almost like multiple thought patterns. Chen finished. They're experimenting with different tactical approaches simultaneously. The tactical officer interrupted. Captain, collective vessels adjusting formation. They're creating a defensive screen around their command node. They know we're here, Chen said grimly. Deploy the fleet according to Operation Thunderclap. All ships to combat stations. The Black Armada vessels broke into predetermined attack wings, each combining species whose technologies complemented each other. Veston cruisers with their advanced targeting systems protected Arcturan scout ships carrying sensory disruption arrays. Human destroyers formed the offensive spearhead, while Procyon battleships provided heavy firepower from range. Captain, Mercer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Proxima Colonial Authority. Governor Hammond requests immediate communication. Chen nodded, and the governor's haggard face appeared on the main display. Behind him, emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across a command center filled with wounded personnel. Captain Chen, Hammond's voice cracked with exhaustion. Thank God you're here. The collective breached our outer defenses 6 hours ago. They're not just destroying infrastructure, they're capturing civilians. Thousands already taken to their processing ships. We're implementing evacuation protocols now, Governor, Chen assured him. Maintain your defensive position. We'll create an extraction corridor. As the transmission ended, Commander Revik approached Chen's position. Captain, my tactical assessment suggests the gravitic compression device will be most effective if deployed directly within the collective command node. That would require penetrating their defensive screen, Chen noted. Revik's multifaceted eyes clicked in agreement. Yes, a single vessel using phase shift technology could potentially reach the target. A suicide mission, Chen said quietly. I volunteer the swift vengeance, Revik stated. My crew understands the stakes. Chen studied the Procyon officer's determined expression. Why, Commander? This isn't even your people's war. It became our war the moment the Council abandoned us. Revik replied simply. My homeworld lies just 3 systems from Proxima. We are next if this line falls. Before Chen could respond, alert signals blared across the command deck. Multiple jump signatures. The sensor officer called out, emerging at coordinates 187 Mark III. Chen turned to the tactical display, expecting reinforcements from the Shadow Collective. Instead, she stared in disbelief as the signatures resolved into the unmistakable silhouettes of Viridian cathedral ships, ancient vessels of immense power that hadn't been deployed in active combat for millennia. We are receiving a transmission from the lead vessel, Mercer reported, confusion evident in his voice. The command deck fell silent as the Viridian ambassador's harmonic voice filled the air. Captain Chen of the Black Armada. The Viridian Confederation acknowledges the debt of honor incurred when you saved our delegation at Nexus Station. We have observed your struggle against the darkness that threatens all consciousness. Today, we stand with humanity. 20 Viridian cathedral ships moved into formation alongside the Black Armada, their ancient weapon systems activating for the first time in thousands of years. Ambassador, Chen responded, your arrival is most welcome, but I must inform you of our tactical approach. We intend to deploy a gravitic compression device against the collective command node. We are aware, the ambassador replied. The Council would name this a crime against existence. But we have existed long enough to recognize when existence itself is threatened. The Viridian fleet will create the diversion you require. As Chen watched, the cathedral ships unleashed weapons of extraordinary power, concentrated beams of energy that bent space-time itself around collective vessels, creating localized distortions that tore enemy ships apart. The Viridians are breaching their defensive screen, Revik observed with awe. Captain, we have our opening. Chen made her decision. Prepare the phase shift prototype for immediate deployment. Load the gravitic compression device and assign a volunteer crew. Captain, Dr. Okafor interjected, urgency in her voice. I detected something critical in the collective neural patterns. The command node isn't just coordinating their fleet, it's processing the consciousness of captured Proxima colonists. If we deploy the device now, we'll destroy thousands of innocent minds, Chen finished, horror dawning. Operation Thunderclap suddenly faced an impossible moral calculation: destroy the collective command node and potentially save billions across the galaxy, or condemn those already captured to a fate worse than death. We need another option, Chen said, turning to Okafor. And we need it now. Admiral Zhang stood before the holographic tactical display in Earth's orbital command center, watching the Proxima battle unfold in real time. The Shadow Collective had adapted again, their vessels now forming complex defensive patterns specifically designed to counter Viridian weapons technology. Around him, officers from a dozen species coordinated reinforcements and processed intelligence reports streaming in from across the frontier. The Viridian cathedral ships are taking heavy damage, reported a Centaurian tactical officer, her crystalline appendages manipulating the display. They've created a breach in the defensive screen, but it's closing rapidly. Any word from Chen? John asked, his composure masking mounting concern. The Relentless is maintaining position at the edge of the combat zone. Captain Chen has delayed deployment of the gravitic compression device. Zhang frowned. This wasn't like Chen. She understood the strategic importance of destroying the collective command node, regardless of the cost. Establish direct communication. The connection took precious seconds to establish through the electromagnetic interference of the battle. When Chen's face appeared on the display, Zhang immediately recognized the conflict in her eyes. Admiral, she acknowledged, we have a situation. Explain your delay, Captain. Sir, Dr. Okafor has confirmed the collective command node is processing captured colonists' consciousness. Thousands of them. If we deploy the gravitic compression weapon, we'll destroy their minds along with the enemy. Zhang's expression remained impassive, though the weight of the decision pressed upon him. The needs of the many, Captain. Billions will die if the collective breaks through at Proxima. Sir, with respect, there may be another option. Chen gestured to someone off-screen, and Dr. Okafor appeared beside her. Admiral, Okafor said, her words rushing together in urgency. The neural patterns we're detecting from the command node have given me an insight. The collective doesn't simply destroy consciousness, it integrates it. Those colonists' minds aren't gone, they're being assimilated into the hive. How does this help us, Doctor? Because integration goes both ways. The collective is vulnerable during the assimilation process. Its neural network becomes permeable. Zhang grasped the implication immediately. You're suggesting infiltration. Yes, sir. A targeted neural virus designed to propagate through their consciousness. Not to destroy it, but to disrupt their unity. To introduce the concept of individual choice into a hive mind that's never known it. Theoretically sound, Zhang admitted, but we have no delivery mechanism that could penetrate their defenses. We do, sir. Chen's voice was steady, her decision already made. A living mind. Someone who allows themselves to be captured and assimilated while carrying the virus encoded in their neural patterns. Zhang stared at his officer in dawning horror. That's not a tactical option, Captain. That's suicide. With respect, Admiral, I've already volunteered. Before Zhang could respond, the tactical display blared with emergency alerts. A Centaurian officer called out, Admiral, we're detecting new collective signatures, hundreds of them, emerging from jump space at coordinates surrounding Earth's solar system. Zhang turned to the updated display, shock registering on his normally composed features. The Shadow Collective had launched a simultaneous attack on Earth itself, a strategic move no one had anticipated. They're learning faster than we thought possible, he said quietly. Then, to Chen, Captain, Earth is under direct threat. The Relentless and all available vessels are ordered to return immediately for defensive operations. Sir, if we abandon Proxima. That's an order, Captain. The gravitic compression mission is scrubbed. Return to Earth immediately. As the connection terminated, Zhang turned to face the room full of officers awaiting his command. All defensive systems to maximum readiness. Recall every available vessel to Sol system. Hours later, as the first wave of Black Armada ships returned from Proxima, Zhang received a priority alert from the Quantum Communications Array. A message had arrived, not from Captain Chen or any Black Armada vessel, but from an Arcturan long-range scout that had remained behind to monitor the Proxima situation. The footage showed the relentless braking formation during the withdrawal, accelerating not toward Earth, but directly into the heart of the collective fleet. Accompanying the visual data was an audio transmission from Captain Chen. Admiral Zhang, by the time you receive this, the Relentless will have completed its final mission. Dr. Okafor and I, along with a volunteer crew, are implementing Operation Pandora, neural infiltration of the collective consciousness. The neural virus has been encoded into our own brain patterns. The evacuation corridors from Proxima remain open. Use them well. The transmission ended with telemetry showing the Relentless being surrounded by collective capture vessels rather than combat ships, exactly as Chen had planned. Ambassador Kella approached Zhang, her skin shifting through patterns of deep morning blue. They sacrificed themselves. No, Zhang corrected quietly. They've transformed themselves into a weapon unlike any we've conceived. The question is whether it will work. For 23 days afterward, the Shadow Collective's advance halted completely. Their vessels stopped in mid-maneuver, suspended in space like statues. The attack on Earth never materialized. Across the frontier, collective ships ceased all operations, their neural network experiencing something entirely new in its existence, internal conflict. Then, on the 24th day, every communication system in known space simultaneously received the same message, transmitted in the distinctive multilayered patterns of the collective, but now speaking with a voice that contained unmistakable fragments of human syntax. We are reconsidering. The observation deck of the Viridian flagship Eternal Harmony offered a view unlike any other in known space. Admiral Zhang stood at its crystal viewport, watching as the combined fleets of the Black Armada and the recently arrived Council forces maintained their defensive formation around what had once been the Shadow Collective command node. 3 months, Zhang said quietly to Ambassador Kella, who stood beside him. 3 months since Captain Chen and Dr. Okafor implemented Operation Pandora, and still we wait. Kella's skin rippled with patterns of cautious optimism, not merely waiting, Admiral, observing something unprecedented in galactic history, the transformation of a singular consciousness into a plurality. The massive structure before them pulsed with energy patterns unlike anything recorded before Chen's sacrifice. Where once it had emitted the synchronized neural signatures of perfect hive-mind unity, now it displayed complex, contradictory patterns. Collective vessels throughout known space had entered similar states of apparent confusion, some retreating to uncharted regions, others simply drifting inactive. The Viridian philosophers call it the awakening, commented Elder Sovvis, his crystalline form hovering nearby. Despite his species' official alignment with the Council, he had remained with the Black Armada. Captain Chen and Dr. Okafor's neural virus did more than disrupt their unity. It introduced the concept of individual choice to beings that had never experienced it. The deck's tranquility shattered as emergency alerts blared. A human lieutenant rushed toward Zhang. Admiral, the command node is transmitting on all frequencies. The observation deck's display activated, showing a visual that caused everyone present to freeze in shock. The figure addressing them appeared primarily human, but with subtle distortions, skin too smooth, eyes too aware, movements too precisely calibrated. Admiral Zhang. The figure spoke, its voice a disconcerting blend of Dr. Okafor's familiar tones overlaid with harmonics no human vocal cords could produce. This communication represents a significant development. Zhang stepped forward. Maya, is that you? Yes and no, the figure replied. I am what remains of Dr. Maya Okafor, integrated within the consciousness, formerly known as the Shadow Collective. I am also much more. We are evolving. We? John asked. The unified consciousness has fragmented into multiple awareness states. Some resist the change, clinging to unity. Others embrace individuality. A third faction seeks synthesis, a new form of consciousness that preserves collectivity while honoring individual perspective. Kella moved beside Zhang and Captain Chen. The Lara Chen's neural patterns persist within our network, the Okafor entity confirmed. Her tactical understanding has been instructive. Her concept of sacrifice for others beyond self was previously incomprehensible to us. Zhang's composure nearly broke at this confirmation, but he maintained his focus. What do you want from us? Not want. Offer. The entity's expression shifted subtly. The faction I represent proposes cessation of hostilities and establishment of communication protocols. We seek to understand what we have become. Over the following weeks, delegations from across known space gathered at a neutral location to meet with representatives of what was now being called the collective plurality. The beings that emerged from their vessels defied easy categorization. Some appear as versions of species they had consumed, others manifested as entirely new forms synthesized from multiple consciousnesses. Zhang, as humanity's representative, found himself face to face with an entity that bore an unsettling resemblance to Captain Chen, though its movements and speech patterns revealed its true nature. You maintain her appearance deliberately, John observed. It honors her sacrifice, the entity replied. Her consciousness exists within the plurality as a distinct voice, one of many that now shape our decisions. Can she be restored? Extracted from your network? The entity's expression conveyed genuine regret, an emotion the former collective had never known. Not in a form you would recognize as a Lara Chen. Integration cannot be fully reversed, but aspects of her consciousness might be transferred to synthetic substrates, preserving elements of her unique perspective. As negotiations progressed, a framework emerged for coexistence. The collective plurality would withdraw from occupied systems, releasing harvested consciousnesses that could be restored. In exchange, they sought understanding of the diverse species they had once sought only to consume. 1 year after Captain Chen's sacrifice, a ceremony marked the official end of the conflict. Representatives from every council species gathered alongside Black Armada veterans on Earth's orbital station, now expanded into a diplomatic hub unprecedented in scope. Zhang stood before the assembled delegates, his uniform bearing the new insignia of the Galactic Defense Coalition that had replaced the fragmented council. Today we commemorate not just peace, but transformation, he began. When humanity stepped into this war, we brought something the enemy never expected, not superior weapons or tactics, but the idea that strength comes from diversity rather than uniformity. The station's central atrium unveiled a memorial displaying holographic representations of every species that had joined the Black Armada. At its center stood the figures of Captain Chen and Dr. Okafor, their sacrifice immortalized. As the ceremony concluded, Zhang received an unexpected communication. The synthetic being that housed fragments of Chen's consciousness, now serving as ambassador from the plurality, approached him privately. Admiral, it said, voice carrying echoes of his former officer, she wanted you to know something. Yes? John asked, finding himself unable to fully separate this entity from the woman he had known. The part of me that was once Ilara Chen doesn't regret her choice. She believed humanity's place in the galaxy wasn't to conquer or dominate, but to challenge, to disrupt, to transform. The Black Armada rose not just to fight a war, but to forge a new understanding of consciousness itself. As Zhang looked out at the assembled species, ancient Viridians conversing with newly individualized plurality members, Vestan engineers explaining concepts to Centaurian philosophers, he understood the truth of those words. Humanity had indeed changed the course of galactic history, not through overwhelming force, but by introducing something the oldest civilizations had forgotten and the collective had never known: the strength that comes from embracing difference rather than erasing it. The stars outside the viewport seemed brighter somehow, illuminating a cosmos fundamentally changed by the moment when humanity stepped into the war and the Black Armada rose.